I believe that meditation and mindfulness are the next big public health revolution. In the 1940s, if you told somebody you were going running, they would have said, "Who's chasing you?" But then what happened next? The scientists swooped in, they showed that physical exercise is really good for you, and now all of us do it, and if we don't, we feel guilty about it. And that's where I think we're headed with mindfulness and meditation. It's going to join the pantheon of no-brainers like brushing your teeth, eating well, and taking the meds your doctor prescribed for you.
You know, this mindfulness revolution has swept America, especially everybody in Silicon Valley is meditating and taking on stoicism. Everyone's exciting to pay attention and to bring their presence and aliveness to the moment. How can you do it? Because a lot of people, they're frankly not naturally good at mindfulness. If you think about it, they're caught in these reactive traps. You know, they're always impulsively reacting to things and they don't feel centered. They don't feel peaceful. They don't feel connected to the moment. And frankly, those are things that just take training in the modern world. Hey, maybe those things came to people naturally, 100 or 1,000 years ago. They certainly don't today. You're constantly distracted. Your attention is constantly broken into. So what could you do to feel a little bit more of that aliveness and connection with life that comes through mindfulness?
Mindfulness is just kind of a fancy way of saying be present.
Well, mindfulness is all about paying attention and being present. And so mindfulness is both a formal meditation practice where you sit in a chair and you practice paying attention and being present, but it's also a way of living, because there's no point in being mindful in a chair for 5 or 10 minutes at the start of a day and then getting out of the chair and being unmindful for the rest of the day. So mindfulness in its fullness is both a formal practice in meditation, but it's an informal practice in living with awareness, living in the present moment, living with intention and openness in our day-to-day life.
The tip or the technique as such is to be present. So, and you can be present with any aspect of your life, really. But you can do it with the simplest of things. So in the first mindfulness class, we give people a raisin to eat. So you can just eat the raisin. We spend about 10 minutes eating a raisin, which sounds a bit weird and a bit strange. But the idea is to really engage all of your senses and to really taste that raisin. And people will say at the end of that, I never knew that raisins, tasted like that. I never had any idea, associations of the earth and all kinds of things that come to mind. So it's really, you can turn your attention to the simplest of things. It could be absolutely anything.
And when it comes to meditation, I often hear this idea that people can't meditate, they're not good at it, their brain doesn't work that way because when they've tried in the past, they cannot have a blank mind. And just to clear that up, you're never going to have a blank mind. And that's okay, because our brain's job is to think. And if it stops doing that, that means we're dead. And nobody wants that. So what we're trying to do when we are doing a mindfulness meditation is that we're noticing when we're having thoughts. Okay, so you might be focusing on your breath and then you get carried away in thinking about that grocery list, the shopping that you have to do the next day. And that doesn't mean that you failed. What that means is you say, thank you, mind. You acknowledge that you had that thought, and then you return to the breath. Okay, and you might do that 100 times in a 5-minute meditation, but as you practice that, as you get better at it, it tends to be less often that you get caught up in those thoughts and carried away.
It's a conceit and probably delusional to think that, since mindfulness is just about being in wise relationship with the present moment, well, I can just do that in any moment throughout my day and so forth. It sounds good, but as I've been trying to emphasize, it's the hardest work for us human beings to even string 2 moments of mindful presence together. So it does help to actually take some time out and formally exercise the muscle, work the muscle. And that's what the formal meditative practices would be, whether it's done lying down, a body scan, or just a quick lying down meditation, or sitting meditation, or walking meditation, or standing meditation. These are what we call formal mindfulness practices. And for the vast majority of human beings, those are absolutely essential. But that's not the real practice. That's the laying the foundation and completely supporting the real practice, which is living your life moment by moment and being here for it.
First ways that a person applies mindfulness is, firstly, doing a formal mindfulness meditation practice is a great way to really get the process going. And we don't have to sit in a chair practicing mindfulness meditation for too long to realize that most of the time when we're trying to pay attention, our mind's all over the place. So learning to notice, not to judge or react to the fact that the mind gets distracted, to be more accepting and open, to notice when the attention goes off, to gently bring it back. So in mindfulness meditation practice, that would be to the body or the breathing, for example. So learning to practice that for 5 or 10 minutes, maybe say twice a day before our working day, so early in the day and maybe early in the evening, between our working day, say, and our evening. It would be a good sort of time for the formal practice of mindfulness meditation. And then the informal practice of mindfulness is to be present and attentive as we go about our day-to-day
Practice.
One way that people could start is because it's very hard to do this, but there are 2 wonderful moments in the day that you can really practice this when you ordinarily might say, well, I don't have any time for a formal mindfulness practice. I'm just way too busy. How about the moment when you wake up in bed? And rather than jumping out of bed, you just lie here and ask yourself, have I woken up fully yet? And be aware of all the thoughts moving through your mind and how it is in the body, lying there on your back maybe. And just getting in touch with your breath and the sense of your whole body lying here. So everybody's got time for that. Maybe just 1 or 2 or 3 breaths, but at least you've tuned. And if you want to do it longer, wake up a little earlier, do it for half an hour. You don't even have to get out of bed. And that way, no more excuses like, I don't have any time to meditate. Of course you have time to meditate. And if this is as important as I'm saying, you don't have time not to meditate. Because the potential value in terms of health and well-being is extraordinary.
Mindfulness is not just meditation. Now, most of the times when mindfulness comes up, it is in the context of meditation, but you can really do anything mindfully. You can drive your car mindfully, you can wash the dishes mindfully. And what that is when you're doing it, you're just focusing on what you're noticing, what you're seeing, what you're hearing, what you're feeling, using all of your senses to be in that present moment and really focusing on the task at hand.
So the training is the mindfulness meditation, and life is being mindful. So how can I walk mindfully, work mindfully, be with my children mindfully, be with my partner mindfully, be with myself mindfully, which simply means having good self-awareness and being present. So it's not sort of some mumbo jumbo, how do I live a mindful life? How do I be present? How do I be in the here and now with myself, with my lover, with my children, with my friends, with my colleagues, in the office, at home? So the practice is the mindfulness meditation, and the practice...
Mindfulness draws upon systems and neural networks in the brain that regulate attention. So specifically, there are executive regions right behind the forehead that are involved in the top-down regulation of attention. And literally through sustained mindfulness practice, such as in meditation, people literally thicken neural tissue, cortex tissue, in these regions behind the forehead, which is an indicator that they've built up neural structure because they've used a function again and again, regulating attention, which is central to mindfulness. And in the famous saying, neurons that fire together, wire together. It's kind of like muscle building, literally. As you continually work your biceps, you build up your biceps. If you work your triceps, you build up your triceps. So in that way, through mindfulness training, as people repeatedly work these neural networks right behind the forehead involved with top-down control, more blood flows to them, neurons start wiring together, existing neural connections called synapses become more sensitive, and in that way, mindfulness training leaves lasting, measurable changes behind in the physical brain in terms of its structure and function.
Pop up. So take inspiration from everyone around you. Have a look, see what other people do to connect to themselves. But then just let that go. Allow that to be their practice. And instead, think about this really dynamic process of figuring out what it is that helps you to feel more connected. Is that yoga? Is that sitting down and reading a book? Is that taking a walk and leaving your phone at home? Is that being in the presence of certain people? Is it thinking about the breath? Is it just sitting for a few moments and breathing in a conscious way? So what is mindfulness? The answer is that it is something different for each of us. But if we want to develop a mindfulness practice, it isn't about what anybody else is doing. It's about finding something that helps us to feel more connected to ourselves in a way that works for us. And if that works for us today, but it doesn't feel right tomorrow, then that is all part of the process, and that is part of developing a practice.
The business world is showing an increasing interest in mindfulness, and I believe there's a reason for that. We currently witness a level of unprecedented change, mainly driven by digitization, automation, artificial intelligence, and just an overload of information. This has immense consequences for all of us. We need different ways of working, and we need new skills. But many organizations are not ready to make this transition yet. It's an overstretch. Many people struggle with making sense of agile ways of working and with understanding new technologies. And this creates anxiety and resistance. Mindfulness fosters open-mindedness and clarity, and thereby it helps leaders and teams to adopt quickly and to increase even the speed by which they learn new things.
It's meant to be an experience that you can fully enjoy. But routines at work could put us on autopilot. This can be easily boring and often very stressful. People are consciously distracted with notifications these days, digital distractions, back-to-back meetings, so on and so forth. So instead of operating unconsciously, it's important to remind ourselves constantly to focus on the present moment. And the very first thing you got to do is to create a mental reminder. It's very challenging to do so, but trust me, regular and conscious efforts will help you change any habit. It's natural for your thoughts to wander, and when that happens, make conscious efforts to come back to the present moment. Try self-talk, particularly the kind of talk which allows your thoughts to shift to the present moment. Mindfulness, whether it is at work or in life, is to be consciously present on what you're doing while we are doing it. Applying mindfulness requires your full attention. So if you're talking to a person, you need to pay full attention to that person. While doing a task, pay attention only to that activity. When you have a presence of mind, you bring in all your senses to pay attention to all that demands your full attention. You switch from a default mode to an attention mode. You slow down a bit to be more agile. Now, this may sound counterintuitive, but when you take a mental break with sufficient relaxation, then you bring in your full attention and you can complete any work faster, and obviously the results are much better. So instead of stressing out, learn to manage pressure with more ease, because you are more engaged in your activities when you are mindful. Also, instead of time consuming you will learn to consume time with focus and intention. Today, mindfulness has become a tool to train yourself to pay attention. So when our minds get overwhelmed with more than what it can process, we tend to become less mindful. We lose our presence of mind. We find difficulty, switching from the past future timelines to this present moment. We struggle from switching from work to our dinner tables with family. We're depleting the gift of staying in the present to enjoy the now. to be here in the now. We forget that the now that we can fully enjoy in this present moment is actually a true gift. That's why the present is also called a present, which means gift. So let's learn to enjoy, completely soak in, immerse ourselves in this gift of present moment. Let us learn to live mindfully, eat mindfully, cook mindfully, walk mindfully, learn mindfully, listen mindfully, speak mindfully. We have this gift to live mindfully, and we have the capacity to do so when we put the intention to live in the now.